All right, Chapter 5 exam. Nothing to freak out about. You're going to rock this. In fact, you've already proven to me and to yourself that you can do the types of problems that are on this exam. You just have to be patient and prepare yourself to take the exam. And that's what I want to talk to you about here is what do you need to do to get yourself set up for rockstar performance. All right, so this exam has 35 problems, 15 fewer than your Chapter 4 exam. You have unlimited time and 2 attempts to take this exam. That means that after you've completed your first attempt, you can go in, look to see which problems you answered correctly, which ones you answered incorrectly, and then you can open up another window and have that sitting right next to your first attempt, and you can go through the exact same problems in the exact same order for your second attempt, and just make sure that you answer the ones you got correctly the same way, the ones you got correct on the first attempt the same way on your second attempt, and don't answer the ones that you got incorrect on your first attempt the same way on your second attempt. And remember, when you're going back through that second attempt and you're looking at the problems you didn't get correct on the first attempt, see if you can eliminate the answers, not only that you know isn't correct because you got it marked wrong, but also some of the other possible answers that you're pretty sure aren't correct either. And you're going to find that field of possible correct answers narrow down pretty significantly, and you're going to rock it. What else do I want you to know? I want you to make sure you pay really, really careful attention to exactly what the problems are asking of you. There are some problems that will ask you to assume the Boolean standpoint, or some problems that will ask you to assume the Aristotelian standpoint. And that's going to be really important in how you answer that question. So look really carefully at the answers to the questions. Don't rush through this. Remember, you can kind of do this in pieces, maybe do 5 problems at a time, and then save your work and then come back. If something hiccups for you, like instead of hitting save, you accidentally hit submit, that's okay. Just email me and tell me that happened. That's not uncommon. It's also not uncommon for somebody to goof on the second attempt and they accidentally answer a question incorrectly that they answered correctly on the first time. And again, if that happens to you, that's nothing to freak out about. You just got to let me know via email. It happened to somebody on the Chapter 4 exam, and I just went in and fixed it for them. So when you have problems like that, just let me know. Don't freak out. The other thing I want you to know about this exam is that there's a pretty wide range of difficulty in the problems here. So if you find yourself trucking through some of the problems and going, oh, wow, this is so easy, and then all of a sudden you get smacked in the face by a really difficult problem, don't let that compromise your confidence, okay? Because you can do this. I know you can do this because you've already been doing these kinds of problems. So when you hit those really difficult problems, just kind of slow down, don't get discouraged, and make sure that you have your handouts and your notes with you, because it's in your handouts and your notes that you have the step-by-step process that will lead you through the different things you need to do in order to solve the problem correctly. All right, so I'll show you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. So here's a problem on the test, question number 15. Oh, by the way, when it says throughout this test you can write your answer on the form, just ignore that. I'm not sure why that's there. It must be because there's a paper version of this exam. Okay, so it says syllogistic form 1A, given the following syllogistic form, and then it gives you an argument, and it asks you to identify the mood in the figure. You can totally do that. You've been doing that over and over and over again each week leading up to this. So you can totally do that. You've got your page 267 in your chapter 5.1 handout to help you answer problems like that. Similarly, you'll have other problems that do this. They give you an argument, and then it says, all right, tell me, assume the Boolean standpoint. That's important. You can see that right there. And then you indicate, is this invalid? And if so, what's the fallacy it commits? Or is it valid? So this is going to allow you to go through and apply those 5 rules for categorical syllogisms. So you're probably going to want to have scratch paper where you can write this down, mark all your distributed terms, and then figure out, is this argument in fact valid or not? And if you want to verify your answer, a really smart thing to do would be to determine the argument's form. Check page 267, do a Venn diagram for the argument and see if it shows what you think your application of the rules is showing. Okay, so these kinds of problems you're going to be able to manage without much difficulty. There are going to be other problems, though, where you find yourself kind of rocked for a couple of reasons. One is you're going to see that there are some problems that there are a number of problems that require you to do one thing correctly. And if you don't do that one thing correctly, you're going to get a number of those problems wrong. So if after your first attempt you find that you get a string of related problems incorrect, it probably means you need to go back to the very first step and redo that first step, because if you do the first step wrong or the first problem wrong, then all the successive problems are also going to be wrong. Okay, so it's sort of that foundational first problem. So here's an example of that. It says, given the following syllogism, movies are not sexy unless they have nude scenes, so Dark Interlude is sexy because it has nude scenes. All right, that's a hard problem. Okay, that's a hard problem because it's asking you to bring everything to bear on that problem and to not freak out when you're solving it. Okay, so when you come across one of these really hard problems, maybe the thing to do is you look at it, you think about it, you pause your exam and you get up and go get a glass of water or something, and then you come back and say, like, all right, I'm going to take whatever amount of time is necessary to solve this problem, because I recognize here I've got to go through this process. I've got this ordinary language argument coming at me, and I've got to get this thing translated into correct standard form categorical syllogism, because the question it's asking me is what the major premise is. And in order for me to know what the major premise is, I have to know what the conclusion is, because the major premise is going to be the premise that has the predicate term of the conclusion. So the first challenge I have is I've got to figure out what the premise is and what the conclusion of this argument is. Then I've got to get this into standard form categorical propositions. Then I've got to make sure that I've got my premises and conclusion ordered correctly so that I know what the major premise is. And it's only then that I can select the right answer. And then I go to the next question and I see it's the same damn argument, except now it's asking me for the minor premise. And so we may be thinking, and maybe there's another problem that says, like, hey, what's the middle term of this argument? And you realize, like, wow, if I didn't get that first translation done correctly, all my answers are going to be incorrect. Okay, now don't freak out about that, because that means that if you do get that string wrong, it probably just means you need to go back and correct the first one. Okay, so take your time with the difficult problems. The last thing, I think it's the last thing I want to tell you, is you want to be cautious about what browser you use. So like right now I'm in Safari on my Mac, and you can see there's an image that's not coming up here, and it's an image that's required for me to answer the question correctly, because the question is, what does the Venn diagram look like, or something along those lines, for this argument. And there's no Venn diagram here. And there's going to be other problems where it gives you a Venn diagram and it's going to say, you know, or which of these Venn diagrams shows this argument, or something along those lines. So Safari doesn't load those images, but for whatever reason, Firefox does. So one of you is probably way more computer savvy than I am and can figure out how to fix this problem in whatever browser you're using. But if when you open up your browser, you don't see Venn diagrams and instead you see something like this, it means you need to use a different browser to complete the exam. So if you run into any kind of problems with that you can't figure out, just email me. In fact, if after the first attempt in your exam, you're going back through and trying to figure out why you got some of the problems incorrect and you just get stumped, email me. We can talk about the problems before you take your next attempt, okay? So let me see, browser, connected problems, email me, 35, pay attention to the questions, Boolean or Aristotelian. I've told you all the things I wanted you to know. All right, so you're going to complete this exam, and then once you do, you've got one more exam to take for this class, right? I mean, we're cooking through this course. The semester is really flying by. So take your time, be patient, have your notes, have your book, have your handouts, have something to drink, be careful, take chunks of the exam, or take the exam apart in parts, so that you don't get overwhelmed. And remember, you can do this. You've already done this. You can do this.